Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 566. Releasing October 27 in theaters and on digital across the US is Suitable Flesh, an erotic horror thriller that stars Heather Graham as a psychiatrist who becomes obsessed with a young patient suffering from extreme personality disorder, only to find his condition is much more than she bargained for. A twisted, kinky, and gory blend of cosmic horror, erotic thriller, and dark comedy, Suitable Flesh is as entertaining a psychosexual Lovecraftian romp you will ever see. And joining me now is the screenwriter of Suitable Flesh, Mr. Dennis Paoli. Mr. Paoli, thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Well, this film is really interesting, especially in the case that the script for Suitable Flesh has been around for a very long time. This is something that was put together over 20 years ago. It was optioned and moved around numerous times. Now it's coming out end of this week, October 27. People are going to watch it. What type of feelings do you have now that this long gestating project has not only been made, but will now finally be seen by the masses? I'm sure it's a real thrill for you.
It's terrific. I couldn't be happier. But it's not the only time this has happened. I've had several films made from scripts that I've written that took more than a decade to make, but this one won. This one was almost 25 years from the inception, from the first draft that I wrote, where at the request of Stuart Gordon, my friend, the great horror film director and genius, and my longtime best friend, Stuart Gordon, was in Europe shooting a couple of movies. He was shooting Castle Freak and then Dagon, both adaptations, one very loose, one much closer to works of H.P. Lovecraft. And he said, well, what's the next story we should work on? We both liked Lovecraft's story, The Thing on the Doorstep. He said, Dennis, go take a whack at that and see if it makes a script. While he was gone, I wrote a script, a first draft, based on that story. And when Stuart came back, he liked it very much. So he put on his producer's hat and took it around, and he got it optioned, and it didn't get made. So we tweaked it a little, and he took it around again and got it optioned again in the early 2000s, and it didn't get made. And then about 5 years later, about 2005, 2006, a couple of actors were interested in the roles. So they optioned it and took it around, but they couldn't get it made. And every time the production companies that turned it down gave the same reason. And I'll let you guess what it was. But the fact is, I put it in a drawer at that point because Stuart was going on to directing some other films and eventually went back to the theater late in his career. So every once in a while, we'd take the script out and blow the dust off of it, and Stuart would take it around. But it didn't look like it was going to get made. And then Stuart passed away, unfortunately, at the beginning of the pandemic. We miss him a lot. And there were several Zoom memorials for him. And at a couple of them, I reconnected with Barbara Crampton, who had been an actress in some of our best movies. And they were some of our best movies because she was in them. She's so good. And she has become a successful low-budget horror producer. And she said, Dennis, do you have any scripts? And I said, well, there's one that Stuart tried to get produced. Here, Stuart liked this project. What do you think? She loved it. She connected Joe Lynch to it to direct. He loved it. He asked Heather Graham to star in it. She liked it. And once you have that core together, you can get a film made. And so Suitable Flesh, retitled Suitable Flesh, ended up being shot right at the end of the pandemic. It premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York. And it comes out on October 27th. If you can out there, if you find it anywhere on a theatrical screen, see it on a big screen, if you possibly can. Joe Lynch is a master filmmaker. He has all the chops. He's a student of film. He has all the tricks from silent film to the film of the future. He knows what film can do. And he pulls them, he's able to pull them all out at will to tell a story. And he doesn't use all of them in this film, but he uses a lot of them, the tricks of the trade that really tell this story about as well as it can be told. If you can see it on a big screen, see it on a big screen, but if at all costs, see it. We'd love to hear how you like it.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Fandango. Get the latest showtimes, guaranteed tickets, browse Rotten Tomatoes scores, and watch trailers with Fandango, the #1 movie ticketing app. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Gift Card Store. Australia's leading provider of gift cards, Gift Card Store offers a variety of prepaid MasterCard and Visa cards in physical or e-card format. You can even design your own card as the ultimate personalized gift. With Gift Card Store, you can gift the gift you know they will love. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. You mentioned before The Thing on the Doorstep, which is a short story by Lovecraft. You've tackled Lovecraft several times in your career, especially in your collaborations with Stuart Gordon. A lot of people have attempted and not have done such a good a job as you have in regards to cracking the Lovecraftian code and how to take his writing and adapting it to a different medium, in this case, filmmaking. What is it about his works that, #1, not only speaks to you, but what have you found in his work that makes it transition to the medium of filmmaking, one that you felt you could not only attempt, but have successfully done so several times now? Because I'm really curious, considering his writing, his dense writing, his mythos of his writing, and how you managed to, transition that to a totally different medium of art here.
You put your finger right on it. You identified the central issue, his dense writing. As a writer, I really appreciate H.P. Lovecraft's writing. He's, I also, my day job while I was writing these scripts, my day job was I was an academic. I was a professor of English at Hunter College of the City University of New York, and I ran writing programs. And one of the courses that I taught for 20 years was Gothic fiction. And Lovecraft, I believe, from my course of study, Lovecraft is one of the geniuses of American Impressionist fiction. He's an Impressionist, by which I mean, like the Impressionist painters, he gives you brushstrokes or Seurat dots, and he says, you put this together. You finish this work in your imagination. You see it the way you see it. He doesn't really show you anything. Oh, maybe a tentacle sliding away out of frame, or maybe you see the effect of seeing the horror on the protagonist, or you hear about this parade of these awful monstrosities that are driving this character crazy, but you never quite see them. He leaves that for your imagination. Lovecraft's writing is one of the most difficult things writing can be, which is suggestive. He invites you into his work to imagine the worst horror that you can imagine. And we just took him at his word. We imagined the worst thing we could imagine and showed it. Film is different. It's a different medium. It's visual. You have to show things. So we took Lovecraft's Impressionism and we made it expressionistic. We expressed our imaginative understanding of Lovecraft's story, of the impression that of the horrifying yet mad. And that's why it's funny sometimes, because it's mad, the mad impression that Lovecraft made on us. And because we were both fans of Lovecraft's fiction from very early on. And we found that we could tell those stories in our own sensibility and still be, we thought, faithful to the spirit of Lovecraft's work. Maybe not the letter, but you can't be faithful to the letter of a work if you're making film. Film isn't made in letters, it's made in frames. So we tried to be faithful to the spirit of his work, to the fear inherent in it, to the questions of identity importantly at the core of it. So we felt free. We felt as if Lovecraft had freed us to be imaginative. And so we took it as license. But we took it as license, but you still have to be brave, because Lovecraft is really good. Lovecraft is a genius. And I was lucky I worked with another genius. I worked with Stuart Gordon. And I've been lucky in this work to work with Barbara Crampton and Joe Lynch. Joe Lynch is a genius in his own right.
It is interesting regarding to Joe Lynch, having worked with Stuart Gordon for such a long time. I'm sure that anyone who was going to step up to the plate and try to, I wouldn't say fill these shoes, because no one can fill, a person like Stuart Gordon's shoes, but to continue the lineage of the great works that you and Stuart have put together, it would have been a tall order. But from what I understand, Joe and Stuart actually knew each other, didn't they? Rather well, before Stuart's unfortunate passing. And I imagine that the relationship that them two had was that connection that them two had was an essential part in having Joe kind of continue that lineage of the great works that you and Mr. Stuart Gordon had all those for all those years when he was with us here on this earth.
Absolutely, you framed it exactly right. Stuart wasn't your normal Hollywood character. Stuart was a generous soul. It's my experience from from working in this genre for a long time, and going to a number of horror and fantasy film festivals and conventions, and meeting a number of the filmmakers, that horror film producers and directors are genuinely nice people. They're often warm family fellas. And women. Their work recognizes their own fears and the important, often terrible role of fear in our lives and in the building of our identities. But they're really nice guys. They manage to bravely challenge their own fears. In not just in their films, but in their lives. And Stuart was like that. He was a generous soul. And Stuart loved working in the theater. He worked in the theater for a long time before he did film. And at the end of his life, he went back to the theater right before he died, in the years before he died. And Stuart loved working in a collaborative mode. He loved working with actors. He loved actors. But he loved other directors. Young directors would come to him because they admired his work. And he was never jealous of his genius. He was always willing to share it. But not just to share his genius, but to try to convince young filmmakers to find their own genius, that they had it. All they needed to do was find it and believe in it. And therefore, he had a number of young directors who didn't just look up to him, but who called him on a regular basis, who would just love to go. Stuart loved to have lunch. Stuart loved to go out in Burbank and have lunch. And he would just, if somebody called him in the morning, let's have lunch. And he would go out. And it's why it was so great to, one, be his friend for as long as I was, and two, to work with him. He was wonderful to work with. So these young directors sort of felt like they were working with Stuart, that Stuart's there over their shoulder while they're working, and that he let them into his process. So yeah, and Joe was one of them. Joe was, it makes me feel old to understand that that Joe was a young guy coming to know Stuart and then meeting me. But he's, it's a great legacy, and Joe is certainly was there at the inception.
So for everyone listening, October 27 in theaters and on digital, suitable flesh. As Dennis said before, if you see this film on the big screen, you would not be disappointed. You should watch all independent horror and all films in general in a big screen if that is the option that you have. There is a reason
Couldn't
why
agree
people
more.
went. There is a reason why people went on strike and are still on strike right now, to make sure that the quality of films are out there in the theater. Watch it in the theater, so that way we can get more filmmakers like Joe Lynch and more screenwriters like Dennis Paoli out there writing and making films as they have done for you for so many years now. And Mr. Paoli, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.